This is, without a doubt, the most disturbing horror film I've ever seen. Considering all the shit I've reviewed, that's saying something. Last House on the Left came out in 1972, was produced by Sean Cunningham, and was written and directed by Wes Craven. Maybe I should have dedicated this year's marathon to him. Considered an exploitation film, some people call it the worst film ever made because of its crude visual style and just how grotesque the story is. There's nothing like it, and for 1972, it doesn't get much more balls to the wall than this. It follows two blossoming teenagers, Mary and Phyllis, who become captives to a troupe of escaped murderers, led by a brutal maniac named Krug. After raping and beating the girls, the killers stuff them in their trunk and drive to the woods. These guys are just out looking for a good time, and they simply have no shame. The girl, Sadie, has sex with Krug in the wide open, with Krug's son at the wheel. The killers take the girls into the woods and force them to do things to each other.
Hit her.
Flock it to her, baby.
The most perverse part is where they hold Mary down while Krug carves his initials into her flesh. There's nothing B-movie-ish or fun about this. Today, lost footage films are nothing special, as you can find them by the dozen, but back then, this was shocking. It feels like you're actually sitting there, watching defenseless as these two girls are raped, tortured, and eventually murdered. The killers then get all dressed up and decide to settle down at a house up the road, which is where the film's title comes from. Lo and behold, it turns out that their hosts are none other than Mary's parents.
Guess who lives here?
I wonder what the odds are on that.
The parents find out what they did to their daughter and get their revenge. At this point, the film becomes pretty suspenseful, and you actually enjoy watching the killers get what's coming to them. There's a scene where you think the mother's going to give oral sex to the weasel. As soon as her head meets his crotch, she bites his dick off. It's crude, but that's what I call justice. The first half of the film dealing with the two girls feels like a documentary, and it leaves you with a dirty feeling, like you shouldn't be watching it. The last half, dealing with the parents' revenge, feels more like a traditional narrative. The other thing that makes you realize it's only a movie is the appearance of the two comic relief cops, the sheriff and his deputy, played by Martin Kove, who you might remember from The Karate Kid. For such a serious movie like this, they seem completely out of place, especially considering they just bumble around the whole time, doing absolutely nothing to help solve the case. Allegedly, the movie was so startling when it came out that people were reportedly fainting in the theater. Now, it's hard to recommend this film because if you're not prepared, it could definitely offend you. In the film's advertising campaign, they had to keep reminding audiences,
"To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie."
The guerrilla way it forces you to watch what's going on keeps you feeling on edge, even uncomfortable. The first time I sat through this, I took a date, thinking we were just going to be watching a shitty horror movie directed by Wes Craven. I never expected this. Today I have a whole new respect for the flick. It's actually one of my favorite horror films, but not for the reasons you'd think. It's not a fun movie by any means, and it plays with you on a psychological level. But at its core, it does what any horror movie is supposed to do extremely well. It scares you. It scares you because when you stop to analyze it, you realize that this could happen to anyone, and probably happens more than people care to admit. At least with a monster movie, you have the fictional element of the unstoppable killer. Even a movie like Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho lessens the seriousness with having the killer taking the identity of his mother. This one puts a very serious situation on film and forces any who dare to confront it head-on. You definitely feel bad for the victims, and you despise the villains. It places you in the minds of the killers as well as the avengers of the victims. The most horrifying part is when you feel justified, as a viewer, when the parents go apeshit and start hacking down the killers one by one. It's very memorable, not for everyone, and I would approach this at your own risk.